In this edition of Art Rocks, creativity bubbles over at Moonbot Studios.
We want to make games, we want to make apps, we want to make books, we want to make films, and we have found a way to do that here.
Bringing the funk to Vegas.
Funk Jam allows me to be a lot more free than I am able to be on any other gig or show I play. It's like recess for a child.
An artist injects art into everyday life.
It's progressed from just printing posters to doing interior work for restaurants and businesses.
And the passage of time captured on film.
She really captured a changing Staten Island and a changing New York City.
It's all ahead on this edition of Art Rocks.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.
We're here in Shreveport visiting Moonbot Studios, which is a bit like fast-forwarding to some fantastical dream workplace of the future and simultaneously taking a trip back in time to your own childhood. You'd expect no less from William Joyce and Brandon Oldenburg, co-founders of Moonbot and the creative forces behind the Academy Award-winning Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lessamore and two-time Emmy-winning Roly Poly Oly. We sat down with Brandon in Moonbot's storyboard room to talk about two new projects coming soon to a kid's imagination near you.
Taking Flight is about the power of imagination. It's a short film that came out of our collaboration with the grandson of the guy who created the Radio Flyer wagon.
The Red Wagon is the vehicle of childhood for so many people, right? So what a thing to be able to build an adventure.
They had us at Radio Flyer when they called, and we were like, well, of course, yes. We've been putting it into our imagery for years. It's an iconic image.
You know, that wagon used to be your dad's. I guess your dad didn't tell you about the aliens.
When we talk about Numberlies, it's about the power of collaboration and creativity.
Absolutely. And there's such a broad distinction between the Numberlies and Taking Flight from an aesthetic perspective, too.
Right. The Numberlies is rooted in German expressionism, with our reference to Fritz Lang and his film Metropolis. And then through that, it's like we've made that approachable for a younger audience as well as retaining the aesthetics that I think is appealing to an older audience. So when we create things here, it's not intentional, but it's sort of the best of both worlds. We're making it for the kid and the adult, and we're also making it, of course, for the adult and the kid.
Now, there are lots of different ways that Moonbot's going to provide for audiences, children, to engage with these. There's not just the films, there's books, there's an app.
I don't know if it's just because we have ADD here, but we love to do so many different things. And since we have such a small company of just under 50 employees, we need to diversify as much as possible. And that sounds like a very business sort of mindset, but really it's just because we love everything. We want to make games, we want to make apps, we want to make books, we want to make films, and we have found a way to do that here with such a small team, which is kind of crazy.
The workspace here in Shreveport at Moonbot is, if a bunch of kids could get together and create a place to work, you have the sense that this is how it would turn out.
We have a close friend, the director of Ice Age, the film. His name's Chris Wedge. And he came through once and saw our offices, and he said, this is like the ultimate pediatrician's office. Which I don't know if it was a backhanded compliment or what. But no, we took it as a compliment. And yeah, we just want a space that will cultivate and encourage creativity. The room we're in right now is our story room, which sometimes gets used for story development. Other times it gets used for interviews. And today, obviously, it's not as messy as the way I like it. I love it when it's super messy in here. I love it when the floors are covered in drawings, because the more we work and create in this room, the more we keep making mistakes. And that's a good thing, because eventually you'll do something right. And that's, you know, once the floor is completely covered in art, I think we're onto something good.
Moonbot, it could be anywhere. It could be on the East Coast, could be on the West Coast. You work with folks all over the country and all over the world.
People have asked the question, like, why are you guys in Shreveport? And the best answer I have is just to show them this video of our ticker tape parade, which we were greeted with when we returned home in 2012 with our Oscar. I don't think any other animation studio in the world, had they been so lucky like we were to receive an Oscar, to be greeted when we returned home with a ticker tape parade. There's so much support in this town, and that's really the most wonderful sort of happenstance in this whole journey that we've been on, is that, yeah, people ask that question. It's like, well, why aren't you on the West Coast or East Coast? I mean, because that makes the most sense. In a lot of ways it does, and it does require a lot of travel to and from these places, but what's most important is that we're now sort of protected. Even though we may be in a swamp, we're protected, and it allows our ideas to cultivate in a new, different way. And you know, if you're on the West Coast, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of other studios that kind of all are bidding for the same work. So you're a little fish in a giant pond with a lot of fish that are ready to eat you. Here, we're the only fish in the pond. And then you have the support of all of the other industries around us that want us to succeed, that want us to continue to grow, want us to bring more jobs here. And when you have that sort of positive energy surrounding you each day, it's like, you know, you feel invincible. And I know that we aren't, but having that feeling gets you out of bed each morning, and it makes you want to get to work and work hard.
What's your philosophy, if you can articulate, of children's entertainment?
Well, I grew up in the 70s with children's entertainment that didn't necessarily have a lot of rails. When Jim Henson was developing Sesame Street, he didn't necessarily have a lesson plan to base it off of. He just did what felt right to him. And he also, at the same time, with, you know, Jim Henson, the company, not Sesame Street, he was making films like Dark Crystal, which were for the kids, but at the same time very dark, and really they spoke to the adult in me, whether it was Terry Gilliam with Time Bandits or Steven Spielberg with Raiders and E.T. This is some pretty intense stuff going on in those films. That's what I consider children's entertainment from when I was growing up. And now, children's entertainment today is very different, and we hope to, and I think this is where maybe we're unique, is we want to try to bridge that gap. We want to be able to tell stories like those that spoke to the adult and the kid.
Brandon, this has been marvelous. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the introduction.
Honor to be a part of this.
Now, let's take a look at some of Louisiana's arts and cultural events in the coming week. For more information on these events, visit our website at lpb.org/artrocks. And to find more arts activities, check out countryroadsmag.com. Next, we're taking you to the Las Vegas Strip, where Sin City's most talented musicians are flocking to a late-night improv session called Funk Jam. Bass player and founding member A.J. Johnson talks about the origins of Funk Jam and why funk improv is here to stay in the City of Lights.
My name is AJ. I'm a bass player. I host the Funk Jam.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Funk 2-year anniversary.
Originally, I'm from Mobile, Alabama. I started playing in church. My dad was a minister, so it was a house rule. If you lived in his house, you had to go to church. And providing that was a rule, I might as well play if I was going to go to church, because otherwise I'd fall asleep. Gospel music is so intricate. Some of the parts are just so advanced, you know, and me doing that at 14, 15 years old, it prepared me for something that a lot of people just are never prepared for as a musician. The Funk Jam is an all improvisational mesh of the most talented musicians that you can find in Vegas. The Funk Jam is every Wednesday night after 11 p.m. We start after 11 because a lot of the guys have earlier, gigs, and a lot of the people who work here work in shows that don't get out till 10:30, 10, 11. Without using profanity, they're the baddest in town. So the musicianship here couldn't get anybody.
My regular job is to play drums with Pen Up, the show at the Stratosphere.
I'm doing the Human Nature show at the Venetian.
I play in a show in Rio called MJ Live.
How the Funk Jam works is the night originates with the core band, and then after that we do like an all-star jam with different guys who we know in the community that we love. And the last set, we do let first-timers get up and play. The reason it's special to be able to do what we do is because it's instant composition. We're creating music on the spot versus memorizing a song that has already been done. And the part that's entertaining to everybody that people love is to watch the communication on the stage in order to create that, because you have to really pay attention to what the next guy's playing to create this.
The Funk Jam allows me to be a lot more free than I am able to be on any other gig or show I play. It's like recess for a child. I get to break loose and just run. The inspiration moves. It moves from person to person. For example, one guy might start doing something really, really cool, and we start doing that. And then another guy starts doing something really, really cool, and we follow that. And the next thing, we're all just changing shapes and forms.
You're allowed to be you up there on stage, and that's what's so cool, is that you can just be yourself and let it shine, and people dig that.
Emotionally, it's just a release. As primal as you can describe it, it allows you also to be creative and to be a little more than you get to be on a regular basis.
It's a happy thing. It's not competitive. It's not like a cutting contest.
We just recently celebrated our 2-year anniversary. That milestone was really important to me because it was really a victory. It was an accomplishment. It was a message to the community that you have been a part of something that has continued this long. And it was also a message to some of the people who might not have gotten involved yet that Vegas, nothing goes on and lasts 2 years and it's really good.
And musicians that have played with everyone around the world, they come here because this is where they want to come, to just let go. The music that happens here is just incredibly unique and rare, and I have felt very lucky to be a part of the Funk Jam.
What drives me to funk music is the groove. You can dance to funk. I love to see people react to it. I love it when somebody came to watch and they really think they're watching, but they're doing this and they don't even realize it. People from the audience come up to me and say a number of things. And one of my favorite compliments is, you guys are freaking awesome. That's one of my favorite ones, because everybody knows that the musicians on the stage individually are great, but it shows a camaraderie and a cohesiveness that has gelled, and it's been pushed at them as one entity. There was a couple that came, and I sat down and talked to them, and they were told by people in their hotel to come here, and they stayed until the jam was over. They were blown away. They're jazz lovers. So anybody who loves any kind of music like that is going to absolutely love the funk.
Sometimes it feels so natural. Sometimes it feels so right.
It almost doesn't matter what you're going through in your life. Playing music is very therapeutic. You can go pick up that instrument or play that instrument, and it's all good after that. The magic of the Funk Jam is this universal love for what we're all doing, and this universal appreciation for what we're doing from the audience. So people that happy, watching people that happy, can't help but be happy themselves. Without a doubt, the people that come to Vegas, you should be at the Funk Jam. Your soul needs it.
From posters to pizza boxes, silkscreen artist Carlos Hernandez adds a little bit of whimsy to everyday items. Let's take a look.
I've always been interested in art. I was always drawing as a kid, doodling, taking as many art classes as I could. I bought like a Kiss album one time and I saw the album cover for Destroyer and I thought, man, wow, that's really cool. That's a band? That's great. My mom told me somebody got paid for doing that. Right then and there, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an illustrator or an artist of some sort that did commercial work that could get paid for that. And you make that a career. We used to have all these punk bands that would come by, that would come through our college town in Lubbock, Texas. A friend of mine said, hey, this band is playing. You know, they're gonna be out during the day at this guy's house and, you know, we should go hang out there and all that kind of thing. They were screen printing shirts and screen printing posters, and I love the immediacy of that style, and I just loved everything that was going on with it, and I decided that's what I wanted to do. We used to go to Santa Fe, New Mexico, got really introduced to a lot of the Day of the Dead things that were happening there, and I wanted to add some of that weirdness and playfulness into my artwork, but also those skeletons and the Day of the Dead things were made by folk artists, and they had a sort of aesthetic that I really loved. So it made me think a different way of not being so controlled. First, I'll either draw something or I'll do something on the computer. I might take a picture of my iPhone and use that. I like to scour old books and throw all of that into the project that I'm working on. And I'll take that and scan it in and produce film. I take the film and shoot that on a camera and burn it onto a screen, or burn the image onto the screen. And then the screen becomes a stencil. Stencil is what I use to draw ink through and onto paper. Yeah, music's always been that springboard for me. I just contacted Live Nation. I kept asking, can I do a poster for you guys? Can I do a poster for you guys? Live Nation is one of the biggest promoters of music in the world, and I decided, why not start there? Through Live Nation, I've been able to do work for the venues that host and promote bands like The Kills, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Arcade Fire, Los Lobos, so many bands like that. Rock Wagner, he bought one of my pieces actually. And, he was looking at it in his office and he said, I'd like to put one of these pieces on a beer bottle one day. And I didn't really think anything of it, but that one day came. He called me up and said, let's do this. Ever since then, I've done more retail work, and that's what I've gotten more into lately. So it's progressed from just printing posters to doing interior work for restaurants and businesses. When I think about those days when I was working out of my garage or working out of my kitchen to do screen prints and burning, you know, images in the sun, yeah, I've come a long way to have this studio and to have all of the work that I have now. You know, I'm grateful for that, but, you know, just goes to show that, hey kids, you know, work hard, stay at it, you know, it pays off.
You can see more of Carlos's work at carloshernandezprints.com. Now, let's celebrate another Louisiana treasure. While today they're grown around the world, this wildflower calls the marshlands home. Enjoy the natural beauty of the Louisiana iris.
First named by John James Audubon, the Louisiana iris is actually a group of 5 different native species of iris. Louisiana's state wildflower is the giant blue iris, which can reach up to 6 feet. There's also the zigzag iris, named after its odd stem. The Dixie iris, similar to the giant blue but considerably smaller. Then there are 2 red irises, the copper iris and the Abbeville red iris, discovered in the bayous south of that city. They're all perfectly suited to the heat, humidity, and changing water levels of South Louisiana. Habitat loss is a major threat to these wild irises, along with coastal erosion, saltwater intrusion, pollution, and exploitation by collectors. Fortunately, these beautiful wildflowers have been hybridized and are available today in hundreds of varieties and a rainbow of colors. Their popularity has spread worldwide, so that today, Louisiana irises are admired in gardens around the globe.
Finally, we visit the Alice Austen house in Staten Island, New York, a National Historic Landmark dating back to the 17th century. The home once belonged to Alice Austen, who was among America's earliest and most prolific female photographers. Today, visitors can travel back to the Victorian era through the museum's period rooms and enjoy Austen's intriguing photographs.
The Alice Austen House promotes the public awareness and scholarly study regarding the life and work of Alice Austen, the early American photographer. What distinguishes her is that she didn't just work in a studio. She did document her home and her family and friends, but she also went out onto the streets, and she really captured a changing Staten Island and a changing New York City. Alice Austen was born in 1866, and she lived 86 years.
Her father left the family when she was a young child, and she and her mother moved in to the Austen homestead, which was called Clear Comfort.
At the Alice Austen House, we offer visitors the chance to view 2 period rooms that really show what Alice Austen's life was like in the home and be transported to another time.
Alice Austen was born at a very opportune time for photography. The dry plate cameras were just coming in when Alice was being introduced to photography in the 1870s. And the dry plate camera really allowed someone to be able to take photographs without bringing your darkroom with you. Alice probably took about 8,000 photos, of which we have about 3,500. Alice described her early life as the larky life. They would have all kinds of parties, and Alice would bring her bicycle with all of the equipment, and bicycling was such an important part of that particular period, particularly for women. It gave them a freedom, and it was a fun-loving life with her friends that she was able to document through her photography.
Alice Austen's body of work includes many staged photographs. She employed her friends to create these very elaborate and multi-layered scenes. Alice Austen had a very women-centric world, and she and 3 of her other friends were what was termed the Darn Club. They had this very close relationship that didn't involve men.
Gertrude Tate was the most important person in Alice's life. Alice Austen met Gertrude Tate at Twilight Rest in the Catskills in 1899.
One of the treasures in our collection is a personal photo album that Alice compiled for Gertrude to document their first meeting at the Catskills. And it's an incredibly personal and intimate look at their meeting and their time with their friends. Gertrude moved into Clear Comfort in 1917, and they spent nearly 50 years together, and 30 of those years were here living at the house together. Alice and Gertrude have been celebrated by the LGBT community as early pioneers. We may not know the exact nature of their relationship, but she spent her life with Gertrude Tate rather than marrying. Alice Austen was a very complex woman in terms of the way that she lived her life, but also in her photography. She really was an early social documentarian and photojournalist. She would load up her heavy photographic equipment on her bike and take the ferry into Manhattan and take pictures of immigrant workers on the streets and documented daily life.
These particular photographs, called the street types, were published by the Albert Type Company in 1896. Unlike Louis Hine or Jacob Riis, who were taking pictures at the same time as social reformers, Alice had a very different view of what she wanted to capture. There's definitely personality that comes through in Alice's photos, and also the intimacy that she shared with the people that she's photographing.
It was, one, unusual for a woman to be a photographer. That was not an activity necessarily that a woman would do, but also what Alice Austen captured and how she captured it. She was really a woman ahead of her time in that sense and many other ways. She was a very independent spirit and lived her life on her own terms.
And that's it for this edition of Art Rocks. Be sure to check us out online at lpb.org/artrocks, where you'll find feature videos and information on upcoming arts events right there on the website. Until next time, I'm James Fox Smith, and thanks for watching.